Hi, in this particular video we're going to be looking at the Edexcel higher tier paper 2 from November 2017. I'm going to aim to work through this particular paper over the course of about 3 or 4 videos, each video being about 20 to 30 minutes or so in length. Please do stop the video, have a go at each of the problems and then compare your solutions. Okay, so on to question number 1, where we're being asked to solve for x. So in other words, we've been asked to find the value of x. Now, there's a couple of different ways of solving these sorts of equations, but basically it should all boil down to the same sort of thing, where we're trying to get x's on one side and numbers on the other. Now, the problem I've got first off is that I've got a bracketed term here, so I need to multiply this 3 out. So on the left hand side I've got 5x minus 6, on the right hand side I've got 3x minus 3. Okay, and then really if I take 3x from both sides, it means I get rid of this 3x and this 5x will become 2x. Well, that's okay for me because I can kind of work with that. So I'm going to minus 3x from both sides. I get rid of that. And on the left hand side I've got 2x minus 6, and that equals minus 3. And then I'm going to add 6 to both sides to get rid of this one. So if I add 6 to both sides, I'm going to get 2x equals minus 3 plus 6 is 3. Okay, and then I'm going to divide through by 2. If I divide both sides by 2, I'm going to get x equals 3 over 2, or if you prefer, you could write that as 1.5 if you prefer decimals, and that's absolutely fine, no problems at all. Okay, hope that's all right for you. Let's move on then to question number 2. Emily buys a pack of 12 bottles of water. The pack costs that. She sells all the bottles for 50p each. Work out a percentage profit. Okay, so if she sells all 12 bottles for 50p each, then the amount that she sells in total is 12 times 0.5, which is £6. The reason I've done that is because I want to keep this in pounds rather than working in pence, particularly because they told me the cost of the pack was that, so it's better in this particular case to keep it as pounds. Okay, and then the formula you need to remember for percentage increase or decrease is going to be percentage increase or decrease, whichever you prefer, okay, is equal to the difference over the original. Okay, and because it's a percentage, I'm going to multiply it by 100. Okay, now if I plug the numbers in, the difference between what she sells at and what she bought at is going to be 36p. And her original price was £5.64. Now that's actually the fractional increase. If I want to work out the percentage increase, I multiply by 100, okay, and that's going to give me 6.4%. And that's actually the answer to this question, that she's going to make 6.4% profit. Okay, let's move on then to question number 3. In question number 3, we've got a circle, and in that circle we're told that Hasmeet walks once around a circle with a diameter of 80 meters. I'm always tempted to kind of just draw that information in. This is 80, and it just helps me to focus. Okay, so then it says there's 8 points equally spaced around the circumference. Find the distance Hasmeet walks between one point and the next point. Okay, well, firstly we need to know the circumference of the circle. So the formula we're going to use is circumference, okay, equals pi d. All right, now some people might use 2 pi r. It's exactly the same, doesn't really make any difference, but in this particular case I can say the circumference is going to be 80, which is the diameter, multiplied by pi. And at the moment I'm just going to leave that pi in there because I don't know yet whether I'm going to need to calculate it much more than that. Then it says, so that's the circumference. Find the distance walks between one point and the next, and there's actually 8 of them. So we're basically going to say that the distance and if I put between points, okay, excuse my writing here, is equal to 80 pi, and there's 8 of them, so it's going to be equal to 10 pi. Okay, now if I want to write pi, that's going to be 3.142. I'm going to multiply it by 10, so it's going to give me 31.42, and that's perfectly good as an answer to 2 decimal places. So the distance between the points is going to be 31.42 meters, and that's to 2 dp. Okay. Right, let's have a look then at part B of the question. It talks about, for the points are moved, okay, has the mean distance that housemate walks between one point and the next point changed? I'm reading this bit here, you must give a reason. Well, actually, no, it hasn't changed, because the average distance, I'll put no, so the reason it hasn't changed is because the total distance divided by the total number of stops hasn't changed. Okay, so things have remained exactly the same despite these stops being brought closer together. The average distance between the points is going to be exactly the same because nothing's changed. Okay, hope that's all right for you. Let's move on then to question number 4. We are 6 or so minutes into the video. Please do stop this video, have a go at this particular question. There are only blue cubes, yellow cubes and green cubes in a bag. Okay, there are twice as many blue as yellow, 4 times as many green as blue. Okay. All right, so let's just have a look at that in a bit more kind of mathematically. Okay, so we're talking really about yellow, okay, there. Twice as many blue cubes as yellow and 4 times as many green as blue. So it makes sense that if I've got blue, yellow and green, I can just say that yellow is X number of cubes. Okay, hopefully that's all right for you. So twice as many blue as yellow means that blue will be 2x, okay? And then 4 times as many green as blue. So basically we're saying 4 times this amount. So that's going to be 8x, okay? So if I work out then that the amount of cubes in the particular bag is going to be 2x plus x plus 8x, which is going to be 11x, okay, amount of cubes, okay, and the probability of picking out a yellow cube is 1 lot of x out of the 11 lots of x, so therefore the probability is going to be 1 out of 11 because I can simply just get rid of those x's. Okay, hopefully that's all right for you. Let's move on then to question number 5, which you're going to need a ruler for, and it's going to be hopefully okay to follow on the particular video. If you print this paper out, then you'll be able to have a go at this yourself. Okay, so it says rotate trapezium T, okay, around the origin 180 degrees and label the new trapezium A. Okay, well, again, there's a couple of ways to do this. You could, and probably the best solution is actually to draw the lines of enlargement in first. Now the reason we can do that is because it's 180 degrees, so they're actually going to be straight lines. So what I can do is I can just simply draw straight lines through the origin 0 for all of the points, okay? And hopefully you can follow this on the video. Okay, all right, there's the last one over there. Okay, it is a little bit confusing when you've got this kind of shape because you can't quite see where each of the points are going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually work with vectors. What I'm saying, or what I'm going to say, is to get to A, which is this point here, I've gone along 2 and down 1. So the vector A is going to be 2 minus 1. Okay, Now if I'm going to rotate that 180 degrees, I'm actually going to reverse it. I'm going to go -2 and +1, okay? So it means then that I'm going to follow from 0 along 2 and up 1. So actually A now is at that point there, okay? Next one with B, I'm going to do exactly the same process. So if I choose B here, okay, so with B, I'm going to go along 4 on the x-axis and down -1 or down to -1 on the y-axis. So that's going to be 4 -1. I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to go -4 +1, okay? So -4 along here, +1, there it is. Okay, so that's going to give me B. Okay, and providing you've drawn these lines relatively well, you shouldn't have too much of a problem with this sort of method. You could also use a bit of tracing paper, actually. It's just struck me that you could use tracing paper to do this, and that would be absolutely fine as well. You don't necessarily need it for 180 degrees, but you certainly would do if it was something like a 90-degree rotation and it wasn't through the center. Okay, let's have a look at C. So along C, 5 and -2. So C, hopefully you can see this on the video okay. I'm just going to move that up slightly. C is going to be 5 and -2. Okay, so again, I'm going to go along 5 and then I'm going to go up 2, and there it is. Okay, so that's going to be C. It's going to be -5 and +2. Okay, so let's have a look then at the final point, which is D, and here it is. Okay, there's D, and to get to D, I'm going to go to -2. So now I'm going to go -2 and 2. Okay, so let's do that. So along to -2 and then up to 2. And you can see all of the points that I've now got have crossed fairly well with the lines of enlargement that I drew a little bit earlier on. So let's just join them up. Okay, I think I'll use a ruler for this one. Okay, so you can see here I'm going to join that to that. That to that, and then that to that, and that to that. Okay. All right, so hopefully you can see that okay. All right, so we've now got a new trapezium, which we're going to call, in line with the instructions, trapezium A. Okay, so that's A. And then it says translate trapezium T, which is this one here, by the vector -1, -3. So -1, -3. So exactly as we did with these vectors here, we're going to take each of the points of trapezium T and then we're going to translate them. Okay, so let's look at A. I'm going to go -1, -3. Okay, so that's going to be the new A. D, -1, -3. That's going to be the new D. B, -1, -3, there it is, okay, and then C, -1, -3, there it is. So actually now we've got the new trapezium, which will go there, and we're going to label that B. Okay, hope that's okay for you. Might be just a little bit of an overboard type of explanation, particularly using these vectors, but it is a good discipline because you can use these in all sorts of other translation type questions. Hopefully it's been useful to you, and there is a playlist on the channel that you can have a look at as well. Okay, let's move on then to so on to question number 6, and the first part of it, we've got p to the 3 times p to the x equals p to the 9. Find the value of x. Okay, well, we've got indices, which are these small numbers here that we are multiplying together. We add them. So in other words, what number do we add to 3 in order to achieve 9? Well, that number is going to be 6. Okay, so in this particular case, x equals 6. Okay, so let's move on to part B, where we've got 7 to the 2 bracketed to the power of y equals 7 to the 10. Well, where we've got a bracket, we multiply the indices together. So we've got what number, when we multiply it by 2, is going to make 10? Well, that number is going to be 5. So in this particular case, y must equal 5. Okay, and then finally we've got this question C, which is says 100 to the A times 1,000 to the B can be written in the form 10 to the W. Okay, show that 2A plus 3B equals W. All right, well, let's just have a look at that for a minute. You'll notice that it is 10 to the power of W. So what we need to do is convert these numbers to the powers of 10. So if I have 100, that equals 10 to the power of 2, okay, because 10 times 10 is 100. 1,000 is going to be equal 10 to the power of 3, because 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. Okay, so in other words, if I have something that is a power of 10, I can write this as being 10 to the power of 2. Remember, it's to the power of A, which is this A here. So what I've done is I've taken that 100 and I've written it as 10 squared. Okay. Similarly, this 1,000, I'm going to write that as 10 to the 3 to the power of B. Okay, and we're saying that's the power of W. Okay, so I can now look at how I work with these indices, and when we have indices in brackets, we multiply these two together. So I could write that as 10 to the power of 2A times 10 to the power of 3B, and that equals 10 to the power of W. Okay, so therefore, when we multiply indices together, as we did in the first part of the question, W must equal 2A plus 3B. Okay, that would be the answer to that particular question. Okay, so let's move on then to question number 7. And question number 7, we have a trapezium. Okay, and we need to do a little bit of work on this particular trapezium in order to find the size of angle CDA. Okay, CDA. So it's going to be CDA. So it's actually this angle that we're actually going to be looking for. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we need to figure out first, really, is that the important thing for us is we need to really try to establish this length along here, because we have a situation where we can create a right angle triangle where we can use SohCahToa in order to calculate the value of x, knowing that the height is 6, and that's okay, but we don't know this length. However, we do know this is 10. Okay, so we know up to that point, or from that point to this point, is going to be 10. Okay, so in fact, actually, I might just write that in. So that's 10 along there. Okay, so the first thing is I'm going to figure out the first length, which is this length along here. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to use Pythagoras. Okay, so what I have is a triangle, which is again another right angle triangle with a hypotenuse of 7.5 and a vertical height of 6. Okay, now Pythagoras says that this hypotenuse, if I square the hypotenuse, it's equal to the sum of the square of these two sides. So I can use that to my advantage, where I can say that if this is a and x, I've got ax squared equals 7.5 squared minus 6 squared. Now, if I pop that into my calculator, I'm going to get 20.25. So the value of ax, which is this bit that I'm interested in, if this is x here, is going to be the root of that. Okay, so the square root of 20.25, and that's going to give me 4.5. So now I know that this length along here is 4.5. Okay, so I now have a situation where I can calculate that 4.5 plus 10 means that the length along here is going to be 24 overall minus 14.5. Okay, so I could say that dy, I'll call this d, and this is going to be y. So dy equals 24 minus 14.5, so that's going to be 9.5. Okay, so I know this length is 9.5, and I know that the height of the triangle is going to be 6. Okay, so I'm now definitely in a position where I can use this information to be able to work out the value of the angle x by using SohCahToa. So if I draw that separately, you'll be able to hopefully follow through from the main diagram that I have a right angle triangle with a height of 6, a length along there of 9.5, and this is the angle that I'm looking for. Okay, so before I do anything, I'm going to label this particular triangle, because opposite angle x is this line, the longest is the hypotenuse, and the one that's left is the adjacent. So if I have SohCahToa, okay, I can then elect which particular ratio I'm going to use. Now I know the opposite and I know the adjacent, so I'm going to use tan. So what I'm going to say is that the tan of x equals the opposite divided by the adjacent, which is the number 6 divided by 9.5. Now the problem with this is that I don't need to know the tan, okay? What I want to do is find out the actual angle itself. So I have to use the inverse trigonometric function on my calculator, and it's usually on a scientific calculator, it's above the tan key and it'll say tan to the power of -1. Okay, so you'll see a little key and it's an orange key or something. You press shift to get to it, and if you type this into your calculator, it will work out the tan, and then it knows the angle that's associated with it, which is 32.275 degrees. Okay, so the answer correct to 1 decimal place, and please do go back to the question, particularly these sorts of questions, always go back and check that the level of accuracy that they're looking for, and that would give you 32.3 degrees as an answer. Okay, hopefully that's okay for you. I'm going to stop the video at this particular point. That's the end of question number 7. We'll start again in the next video from question number 8. I hope you found this useful. Please do add any comments below, and I'll more than happily come back to you. Also have a look at the channel, and there are a number of playlists there with some associated type questions that also would be good practice for you. I'll look forward to seeing you inside the next video.